What up, YouTube? It's your boy Ran through Hundreds. Today we got CIA whistleblower funny moments today. That's what we finna react to, so let's get into it.
From Sacha Baron Cohen one night. And he says, hey, I don't know if you know my characters, but I said, oh yeah. I said, listen, Borat? I said, I almost pissed myself. It's still the funniest movie I've ever seen in my life. So he said, well, I've got this character, Bruno. I said, yeah, the Austrian fashion correspondent. He said, yeah. So he made me sign a non-disclosure agreement. And he said, literally nobody's in on the gag except Pam Anderson. Literally no one else in the film was in on the gag. Well, except, that was in Borat, except Borat's assistant. So anyway, he said, we can't let anybody know that it's me and that I'm in character. And I said, okay, so what can I do for you? And he said,
we're gonna go to the Middle East.
I want to get in front of bona fide terrorists,
He said,
I'm thinking Hezbollah or Al-Qaeda.
and I want to show them Polaroids.
of men having like hardcore.
And I want to ask them if this is a form of torture and should these men be sent to Guantanamo.
Oh my god.
So I said, I go, oh,
That's a bad idea. Yeah, and I said, just as a general rule, you really shouldn't mess with the religious types. I go, they'll kill you, they'll kill your crew,
They'll go out onto the street and kill people who...
who remind them of you.
Honestly, I feel like God put me on this earth to be a public servant. My people over profit.
You know, I generally never talk to people on airplanes. I listen to music or I read a book or a magazine or something. I just don't say anything. I was flying from Milan to Eastern Europe one time, and there was this Italian guy next to me who just would not shut his mouth. And he kept asking me, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? And I said, well, I'm involved in the import-export business. Oh, well, what do you import? What do you export? I said, whatever, turns things into money. He just wouldn't stop. And finally, I said, look, I smuggle women and cigarettes from Eastern Europe, okay? Are you happy now? And he goes, I don't think I approve. I said, I didn't ask for your fucking approval. And then he just kind of sat there with his head down the rest of the time.
And it's not like it is in the James Bond movies, where everybody's like, wow, right on top of their game. Yeah. No, there are a lot of dopes. I was just telling a friend of mine yesterday, we were getting ready to go on, this is the honest to God's truth, we're getting ready to go on a raid in Pakistan. We're going to raid an Al-Qaeda safe house. And I remember saying, where's Chris? Oh, Chris couldn't come. I said, what do you mean he couldn't come? Well, that's why he's here. No, it turned out Chris
beat his wife, so we
have this rule, if you get caught beating your wife, you can't carry a gun. So he can't go on the raid without a gun. I said, okay, where's Jimmy? No, Jimmy got psychologically evacuated. I said, why? He
went nuts this morning.
like, all right, let's just go with what we have. So it's not like, what are you doing there? And he goes,
I've been killing people. What do you think I've been doing?
and it dawned on me that that's why they hadn't sent me. Because I kept saying, you need linguists to do the interrogations. There were no interrogations.
They're just shooting people.
So I finally went into the deputy director of the counterterrorism center's office. He was an old friend of mine. And I said, if you don't send me to Afghanistan right now, I said, as God is my witness,
I am walking straight to Exxon with my Arabic, and I am not looking back.
he's like, will you relax? He goes, all right.
And then he says to me like this, you are Jewish? And I said, I am not recruitable. Don't even think about trying to recruit me. I said, my name is John Kiriakou. I was overt, not undercover. So I said, my name is John Kiriakou, and I'm going to brief you on Saddam Hussein's psychology. And the Shin Bet guy, he has his glasses like this, and he says, spell your name? So I spell it, which made me angry. And then he says to me like this, you are Jewish? And I said, I am not recruitable. Don't even think about trying to recruit me. I was enraged. So afterwards, everybody was laughing. And they said, they've done that to all of us. Every one of us.
They tried it, huh?
Right to your face, right in front of everybody, they try to recruit you. I got back to the office. He said, my boss said, how did it go? And I said, I'm so mad right now. And he said, Mossad tried to recruit you, didn't they? And I said, yes. He said, they do that to everybody. they're just crude about it. Just like a punch in the face.
Yeah, this is one of these incidents that leads to PTSD. When my family and I first arrived in Athens, the embassy put us up in an apartment because they hadn't yet gotten a house. I went sort of out of cycle. Most people go summer to summer, and I arrived a couple of months in. So they needed to go out and find a house. So we're in this apartment, and then they finally find us a house, and we're moving all our stuff up to the house. The embassy has a truck for most of our boxes, and then my wife was in a car, and I was in my armored car. And I had just bought a TV at the PX. It was a big one. It took up the whole back seat. Not big like we have today, but, you know, this is 25 years ago. So it was pretty big. It took up the whole seat. So I'm driving up the same Kifisias Avenue, and there's a motorcyclist, and he's trying really hard to stay in my blind spot. And I thought, that's kind of odd. So I speed up, and he speeds up. I slow down, he slows down. I move over a lane, he moves over a lane. My wife calls me. She's in the car ahead of me, and she says, "Do you see this guy?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm starting to get nervous." And she said, "You don't think it's 17 November? And I said, "They can't possibly be on me yet." I said, I don't know what this guy's doing." And she said, "Are you nervous?" I said, "Yeah, nervous enough that I think I'm going to hit him. I'm going to try to hit him." And she said, "Okay." So I hung up, and I sped up, and he sped up, and then I slammed my brakes as hard as I could, and I swerved right to hit him. And I barely missed him. So
early birds get the vacation rental. Book your week.
we did this a couple of times. And then there's this enormous intersection.
How do you control people who don't actually work for you? You can't. And you risk them going rogue, which of course they do, because it's their nature. If you're being contracted to run an assassination program, you're gonna go out there and assassinate people.
Well, everybody's human, and you make mistakes.
And you convince yourself that, you know, Ahmed Schmachmed is a really bad guy.
And actually,
Nah, it's a cousin with a similar name, but you just put a bullet in this guy's head. Okay,
yeah, you write a check for
$100,000 to his widow and just move on.
and that's not cool. It's a crime. You can't just go around murdering people because you think they might be a bad guy. And so, Panetta,
I never really liked Panetta.
Just because he's not a nice guy.
But Panetta was right to shut that down.
okay, so what are the legalities then of a Blackwater team going out to hit somebody as if a Ground Branch team would? Is it like, I think Title 10, Title 50? Right. One's military, one's CIA, I can't remember.
Guy, good looking, go getter. And he's like, I was targeting this woman, and she has access to the Prime Minister's office, and one thing led to the other, and so it's like, well, what